Deadbeat brother crashed my Crown Victoria. Gets a night in jail he won't forget. Plus, update, and now my father is in jail. I, 21M, have an older brother Dave, fake name, that has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to beat me up when we were kids. He always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable. So, no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact that I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I won't, no matter what they say. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it. So I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he'd borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have the police looking for him. They called me a jerk, then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed back up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jackass before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was going to go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away, then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and he'd be back soon. I said he'd better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dot stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panic call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads, and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled into my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road, and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious, as it was formerly a car of his department, and I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough is enough, and I was going to call the police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was going to pay me back for my damn car then, or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true, and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped in his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to the police. That shut my parents up, and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive, and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped on the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day, and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the crap they'd seen go on there, Dave had actually pissed himself during that, and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he'd bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Now here's update 1. Well, this is an update to my previous post, and this all went down yesterday. My brother promised he'd pay for the damage to my car, and he kept that promise. The body shop guy cut me a deal at a fair price for replacing the damaged front-end parts of my Crown Vic. He just asked if I cared whether or not they were OEM. I told him I didn't care if they were OEM, as the car is far from new and I didn't need the bill to get too high. I'd thought that the damage was only cosmetic, but there was some minor damage the body shop will need to pull out. But it's not frame damage and is an easy job to straighten out, they told me. There was some minor damage to the fender panels, but they said they're easy to fix, especially since I don't care that they aren't perfect. And the new parts will be painted in a matching color, so that's good. My brother willingly paid cash in advance to the body shop after getting the quote from them. He seemed all too eager to hand the money over and politely bid me goodbye. I won't say how much it was, but it definitely hurt his savings, especially after the fine he had to pay for driving without a license. He was wanting to get a replacement car, but he won't have one till his license suspension is over anyway, and I don't know when that'll be, but I think it's going to be a good while. Anyway, my parents had given my brother a ride to the body shop, and as soon as he was out the door, they stayed and admonished me for making him spend all his money fixing my car. I imagine they were about to say something about how I should have just lent him my car to begin with, and how all of this would have been prevented if I had. But something in me snapped, and I cut them off. And that's when it spilled out. I called them out on everything that came to mind. All of the favoritism, how they act like my brother has always been more important, how I had to move in with my uncle just to escape their unfair treatment, how they let my brother steal my car and then tried to lie to me until I threatened police, how they themselves tried to lie to the police by saying I was the one driving when my brother crashed my Crown Vic, and so much more. And I ended it all with saying how stupid it was that they were mad at me for making my brother pay for the damage that he caused by stealing my car on Christmas effing Day and driving it without a license and while intoxicated. By the time I finally stopped, I was nearly out of breath. My mother was crying. My father was red in the face and looked like he was about to explode. Then he just took my mother by the hand and started to walk out. But some guy I don't know that was sitting near the door blurted out, "You guys are narcissists!" Well, that was enough to set my father over the edge, and he started attacking the guy. My father is not a small man, and he knows how to throw a punch. So he started beating the crap out of the poor guy like a mad gorilla. I yelled for the clerk to call the cops, and they did. My father heard that and bolted out the door and drove off. He actually left my mother behind, crying in the lobby. Police had to pick him up at home, and he surprisingly cooperated when he was arrested. But he's looking at charges for assault. The guy he beat up suffered a very swollen black eye, and a possible broken nose and concussion. I was there when they were loading him into the ambulance to get him to the hospital. My mother has called me crying and blaming herself. My uncle is saying it was about time my dad tasted some karma, and my brother is doing everything he can to stay out of it. This is not how I thought this was all going to go down. Now on update 2. Well, my father is out of jail now. I'm told he looks like crap. My mother paid his bail, and he came out looking nearly as beat up as what he did to the guy he attacked. Apparently, he picked a fight while in jail over the weekend and got swarmed by other people there. My uncle went with my mother when my father was let out and described to me what he looked like. He said he's got 2 black eyes, dark bruises everywhere, a fat lip, and he's missing a tooth. My uncle said he didn't try to blame anything on me. In fact, he barely talked. Just got in the minivan with my mother and went home. And I did manage to get in contact with the guy my father beat up. A friend of a friend knows him. I'll call him Dan for the sake of telling this. My father beat Dan up pretty bad. He's got a concussion from his head hitting the wall after taking several punches. His nose was indeed broken. He's in a neck brace and he spent 2 days in the hospital. When I asked him what his plans were, he confirmed he is indeed going to be suing my father and has already spoken to a lawyer. I told him to do what he has to do. Beyond that, I have no details on the case. My friends and I put together a gift basket for Dan, and we each put some money into it since he's not going to be able to go to work for a while. My uncle even contributed, even though he didn't have to. Dan was very thankful when we presented it to him. My mother hasn't tried to call or text me since my father was released, but my mother has told me through text that she's still been crying a bit, and my father has remained pretty much silent since he got home and hardly leaves the couch. The last time my father was like this, he didn't speak to anyone for at least a week, but this situation is way worse than what made him go silent last time. And now, the final update. I know it's been months, but I finally have an update for everyone. The guy my father beat up is doing fine now. Other than needing to have his nose fixed, the rest of his wounds healed fine. He filed a lawsuit against my parents, and my father was initially stubborn as an ox about it and was dead set on fighting it, but he ended up changing his mind. Why? Well, for multiple reasons. The first one being, someone in the middle of the night broke several of the windows on my parents' minivan. My uncle says that the police were pretty sure it was done with a BB gun. I guess that makes sense, but no culprit was found. My father replaced the windows on the van himself, as he's done it before, and no one has vandalized the vehicle since. I think whoever did it may be friends or family with the guy my father beat the crap out of. The next thing was, my father was told by a lawyer that he had no chance of winning in court. There was CCTV footage, multiple witnesses, including myself, and no judge in their right mind would want to listen to my father. The last thing that made him change his mind was my mother threatened to divorce him, and I guess that was enough for him to finally surrender in mediation before the lawsuit went to full court. He settled with the guy he beat up in the mechanic shop for an amount that I haven't been able to find out, as my mother won't tell me. But I'm guessing it was a lot. My father also has been forced to go to anger management as part of the agreement. I've only seen him a few times the past few months, and it's pretty obvious he's still mad at me, because he avoids looking at me and constantly looks mad. But after everything that's happened, he no longer has a way to justify his anger. Not even to himself. He just sits quietly and fumes. He's also apparently cut back on drinking a lot, probably because that's one less expense he and my mother would have to deal with. Now on to my brother. You may all be pleased to hear that he's been working hard to mend things with me. He's moved out of our parents' house and in with a friend. He's got his license back, but no car as he can't afford one yet. Instead, he's been riding a bike to get to work. His relationship with our parents is more strained now, though. After a while, our father started turning his ire on my brother. He finally started blaming him for all the crap that happened over the holidays, and our mother had to make him calm down. He's a lot calmer now since he started going to anger management. But it's obvious he still hates me. But it's not like my parents are offering to do family therapy or couples therapy with each other. And I suspect the reason why is because my father doesn't want more people telling him he's wrong. My mother, brother, and uncle all agree with that too. My father is still employed. His clientele dropped for a while, but he's back on his feet now. My mother says he wants to get a denture made at the dentist for his missing teeth. Yeah, turns out he lost more than one tooth after getting out of jail. It was just one initially, but several of his upper teeth were already in bad shape, and he had to have several of them pulled. So he's missing 6 teeth on the upper left side of his mouth now. A lot of people in my early posts chastised my uncle for keeping my brother's DUI from getting filed, and I was on the fence about that myself. My uncle read a lot of the comments, and finally, after a few months, said that he'll never do something like that again, no matter who it is. I agreed with him, and my brother knows too. So no one is ever going to expect my uncle will just fix something if they get arrested. So that's my final update, everyone. See you all later. P.S. My car is doing fine. It has a tracker and a kill switch now, and there have been no mechanical issues with it since it was repaired. And then OP added one final note, thinking this might be a fake story because it's all too convenient, but I will keep updating as the OP updates. Well, it's good to know that the brother learned his lesson and seems to be making efforts to turn over a new leaf, but what is going on with the parents, man? Particularly old Daddy-O here that's beating people up and getting tossed in jail and just sounds to me like a stubborn old man. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to reason with someone when you just hit them repeatedly in the face with logic and truth, and they just won't budge on their stance. I'm glad that Mom finally gathered up, the nerve to stand up to him and say, look, I'm going to divorce you if you don't get your crap together. So hopefully, there's some path to salvaging the family dynamic there. It doesn't sound like it, but at least the brother, the one that kind of perpetrated this entire story to begin with, at least he seems to be remorseful and is making efforts to make amends. So I hope it all works out for you guys. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for keeping the promise I made my kids at the expense of my stepdaughter? I, 43F, have 2 children, Sarah, 17F, and Aiden, 15M. 9 years ago, my late husband passed away in a fatal car crash. I was devastated. I was afraid for my kids to grow up without a father, and I was afraid to be alone. Luckily, my family stepped up. My brother-in-law acted as a surrogate father for my kids. My sister and BIL do not have kids of their own, but were happy to help us out. 5 years ago, I met my now husband, 47M, and his daughter, Elizabeth, 17F, at a friend's housewarming party. I was hesitant to date again, but I took things slow, making sure he was a good man to be around my kids. I discussed my kids' feelings with them, along with every important milestone, and made sure they were comfortable with my husband and stepdaughter. When he proposed, and I spoke to my kids about how they felt, only one request, the promise, was made. I would make sure that my kids and I had time together, just the three of us still. I agreed to take my children out twice a month, just the three of us, with exceptions if need be. As my kids remember their father, and Elizabeth's mother was still in their life, we made a rule that neither of us would try to be parents to our stepkids. We are responsible for our bio kids. This was discussed with all the children together. Our kids are also allowed to choose how they feel about one another, whether or not they wished for a sibling relationship or something else. It's not up for my husband and I to decide. Back to present time. I still regularly take my kids out twice a month for an adventure with the three of us. This could be going out to dinner, a movie, the zoo, etc. I also take Elizabeth with me for some things, such as getting our nails done, shopping, and volunteering. Sometimes my kids will come along as well. My husband and I are still responsible for our own kids. We parent them differently, but that's what is causing the problems. We are each in charge of grades, party planning, rewards, punishments, special parent-child time, chore lists, curfews/rules. The issue is, I'm far more active in my kids' lives than my husband is. I regularly celebrate my children, go to all their events, keep on top of their grades. I know where my kids are. I listen to their concerns and speak about their lives. My husband doesn't do those things for my stepdaughter. I think I underestimated how much this is creating tension between our kids. Elizabeth and Aiden don't interact with one another. Elizabeth and Sarah absolutely despise one another. Sarah and Aiden are best friends. My husband came to me yesterday and said we needed to talk about how Sarah and Aiden, mostly Sarah, treat Elizabeth. He pointed out several instances of exclusionary behavior, such as Sarah driving Aiden around but not Elizabeth, Sarah and Aiden deciding to have the 2 bedrooms across the house from Sarah. Originally, Aiden and Elizabeth would have had them. Sarah not inviting Elizabeth on her birthday trip to Cedar Point, despite them having the same friend group. Sarah spending money buying Aiden gifts but not Elizabeth. Aiden refusing to allow Elizabeth to use his technology. Sarah and Aiden only doing things Elizabeth doesn't enjoy while at home, or stopping when Elizabeth wants to join. Aiden refusing to cook for Elizabeth. Sarah buying all 3 of them locks for their bedroom doors, which my husband claims is only to make it look like Sarah did something nice for Elizabeth. My husband claimed that I was the cause of this problem by setting the example of excluding Elizabeth with the promise I made to my kids. He demands that I stop the practice and start to treat Elizabeth like my own kid. I said no, as that is not part of our agreement. Elizabeth isn't the one asking me. He isn't willing to step up and act as a father to my kids, and my children come first. I will always make them feel valued. I'm the only one who ever plans anything for the kids. Since we've bought a house together, he has only planned birthday parties for Elizabeth. Nothing else. He doesn't plan family trips, dinners, celebratory events, none of that. I know he won't put in any effort for my kids, as he barely does for his own. When I've brought this up to him in the past, he says it's not my problem and reminds me of our agreement. Oh, and since I didn't add it in, I'm going to speak to both my kids separately and then together to get to the bottom of their behavior. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to break the promise to my kids? Let's read some relevant comments here. User 1 says, "So, info, didn't you see how he treated Elizabeth before you guys got more serious? You're NTA, but I'm curious about what you saw before you got married." OP replies, "My husband and his ex-wife had 50-50 custody. He usually spent time with me, dates, on the weeks where he didn't have his daughter, and on the weeks that he did, it started with me, husband, and her only, and then slowly introducing my kids into more of a blended structure." User 2 says, "I see how you commented he didn't do anything for your kids. He said they aren't my kids, but he wants you to include her? What a hypocrite." User 3 says, "NTA, I guess, but did you not see how low effort his parenting was before you married him, since you took it slow, etc.? Maybe it's just me, but I would have a very hard time respecting my partner if he was such a bare minimum father to his child." Now let's check out an update post here. "Wow, hi all. I did not expect this to blow up, nor did I expect to be posting again after only 24 hours. A lot has happened in that time. First, I want to address some information that was previously left out in my original post. It seems I am not a very good writer. I also apologize in advance for using a lot of lists in this post. It helps me think to have things written out. 1. Aiden is a boy. I accidentally wrote 15F, but I fixed that. My mistake. 2. Both my husband and I were unaware of the dynamic in our household. We both work long hours during the week and don't spend much time together at home. For context, my work schedule is 8 to 6 Monday through Thursday. I have Fridays and Sundays off, and the option to come in on Saturdays when I wish to. My kids and I go to sleep around 8 to 9. Elizabeth stays up a little later, and my husband goes to sleep around 7. He works 12-hour shifts from 6 to 6 every day, and wakes up for work around 5. He also has Fridays and Sundays off. I usually plan for the weekends on Monday, which we typically are out of the house for. We as in me, always, my kids, stepdaughter, and hubby. 3. I do spend time with my stepdaughter, as stated in the previous post. 4. My husband and Elizabeth have different ideas of spending time together. For me and my kids, it's getting out of the house. For those two, it's staying home, playing board games, or watching a movie. This activity started because my husband wasn't in a good financial situation post-divorce, and he couldn't afford to take her out often. So they did a lot of time together. 5. Elizabeth's mother, Bailey, is in jail and has been for 5 months. She committed a small crime and was sentenced to a year. She keeps in contact with Elizabeth via phone calls, letters, and visitation. Saturdays are usually spent now with me and Elizabeth going to visit Bailey, unless I need to work. Her father doesn't bring her. 6. My kids and Elizabeth did get along. The exclusion doesn't happen during family trips or when I'm around. 7. Sarah has a car, but Elizabeth doesn't, though she has a license. Sarah has been working since she was 15, and I agreed that I would pay half plus insurance, while Sarah pays the other half plus gas. 8. Aiden was also not on the Cedar Point trip. I paid for most of the costs, but Sarah helped and a lot of the other girls' parents plus kids chipped in as well. 9. I am more strict with my kids than my husband is with Elizabeth. They have a curfew, grade expectations, safety regulations, etc. I think that's it, but I might add some if I think of anything else. I'm also going to address the previous points. These are not justifications, just how I see them along with more clarification. Sarah driving Aiden around, but not Elizabeth. Aiden does not have a license and has multiple outside activities. Elizabeth drives either mine or my husband's car. Sarah and Aiden deciding to have the 2 bedrooms across the house from Sarah. Originally, Aiden and Elizabeth would have had them. Our house has 2 master bedrooms and 2 regular bedrooms. Sarah was going to have one of the masters, but she insisted Elizabeth take it. Her reasoning being she won't have to share a bathroom with her stepbrother. The 2 masters are on the main floor. The regular rooms are on the second floor, literally just a hallway with bedrooms and a bathroom. Sarah not inviting Elizabeth on her birthday trip to Cedar Point, despite them having the same friend group, said in point 8. Sarah spending money buying Aiden gifts but not Elizabeth. I don't see a problem with this. Sarah earns her own money. She can spend it as she pleases. Aiden refusing to allow Elizabeth to use his technology. He and Sarah are both gamers, but Aiden is 10 times more invested in it than Sarah. Sarah and Aiden only doing things Elizabeth doesn't enjoy while at home and stopping when Elizabeth wants to join. Not sure, but definitely not okay. Aiden refusing to cook for Elizabeth. Aiden cooked a lot as a kid and developed a passion for it. He cooks dinner for the entire fam, including Elizabeth, and will cook separate things on Sarah's request, like lunch or breakfast, and she will also buy him ingredients for new recipes either of them wish to try. Sarah buying all 3 of them locks for their bedroom doors, which my husband claims was only to make it look like Sarah did something nice for Elizabeth. This one I also see no issue with. Privacy is important and all 3 installed their locks. Now here's another update. I spoke with all 3 kids last night separately and told them all to write a list of things they want to address in today's family meeting. I found out a lot that absolutely shocked me when I spoke privately. For the family meeting, we all sat down in the living room. I asked Elizabeth to speak first, since she's the one who is upset and without explanation for her behavior. She reiterated the statements above and added some things on her list. Elizabeth's list: movie nights upstairs without her, refusing to drive her to school/leaving without her. Sarah refusing to invite her to hang out with her friends or lying about where she was going. Sarah having a group chat without her, refusing to even attempt a sibling relationship with her, putting locks on their doors and using the bathroom to be able to visit each other/hang out, gaming without her. Elizabeth said she felt as if they hated her and wanted her gone. She said she's just as worthy of a parent as Sarah and Aiden were, and how it's unfair that we get to be a family and she doesn't have one. Sarah, very rudely, asked if she honestly felt she has any less of a family than she and Aiden do. Elizabeth was going to say something else, but my husband stepped in and asked Sarah to read her list. Though Sarah told me last night about what Elizabeth had been doing, I didn't expect how bluntly she would bring it up. Sarah's list: breaking into their bedrooms and stealing their stuff/food, insisting on sharing clothes/matching, insisting on a sibling relationship when already declined by both, following her around school and forcing herself into Sarah's friend group despite being told multiple times to leave them alone, threatening to go to teachers/me and hubby if they didn't, stealing and then ruining Sarah's makeup, telling my kids they should be happy their father died because now they have her dad and a sister, making inappropriate comments towards anime characters out loud while watching together. This includes minors. Insisting Aiden has a crush on her. Getting handset with Aiden and then getting defensive when Sarah intervenes/calls her out for doing so. This is the real reason Sarah insisted on the bedroom situation. Purchasing 2 fun items and giving one to Sarah after she confessed to a crush on TV. Throwing a fit whenever she loses in a game or any form of competition. Refuses to study/spend time on school and then complaining when she doesn't get good grades. Expecting me to step up and do everything for her, even though I do not do those things for even my own kids, instead of her father. Constantly being late, getting ready for school, and then being upset they don't wait for her. Flirting with Sarah's boyfriend at the time because sisters share everything. Refusing to get a job or do anything worthwhile while being jealous of both kids' accomplishments. When she was done, I asked Aiden if Elizabeth was really trying to touch him. He didn't answer at first, but after a moment said yes. Elizabeth denied it immediately, but Sarah shut her down and said she wasn't finished speaking. Sarah told Elizabeth that she was a disgusting human being, that she thinks she can get away with anything she wants, but she can't. None of their friends like her and wouldn't be around her if Elizabeth didn't make them. That she was spoiled and entitled. That if she ever tried to do anything with her brother, Sarah and everyone else would make her life living hell. I stopped Sarah there, as I don't tolerate threats of violence. Elizabeth said it's not fair, and she and Sarah have similar interests, and that she's only treated worse because she's ugly and Sarah isn't. When you do it, it's cool. When I do it, it's trashy and weird, Sarah argued back, saying it doesn't have anything to do with her looks. She's just a bad person. Elizabeth brought up how Sarah's the bad one, purposefully excluding her, spending time with me separately, refusing to acknowledge her and the house she lives in, refusing to accept her and her father as family, that they both lost a parent. Sarah: my dad is dead. He's never coming back. Your mom is in jail. You speak with her daily. See her every week. It's not the same at all. Elizabeth says, it is the same. I share my dad. You're just female dogging that you have to share your mom now. And then Sarah replies, at least my dad didn't choose to leave me. Your mom had a choice, and I can see why she chose it. Elizabeth slapped Sarah. Aiden punched Elizabeth. Husband shoved Aiden into a mirror hung on the wall. I started screaming at my husband to keep his hands off my children while telling my kids to go pack a bag. Kids ran off. Elizabeth followed them. Husband and I were screaming at each other. I could hear Elizabeth pounding on their doors and crying. After a lot of yelling, my husband slapped me. Then Sarah started screaming at Elizabeth. Apparently, Aiden was putting the bags in the car, and the girls disappeared. I found them in my bedroom fighting because Sarah was packing a bag for me. I told Sarah to go wait in the car while I pack. She hesitantly obeyed. I packed my bag while my husband and Elizabeth were screaming at me, then left. Sarah was on the curb in the driver's seat, so I let her drive away and then told her to switch with me. My son had to be taken to the hospital as the mirror had cut him. Aiden needed 17 stitches and has a concussion. I'm pressing charges against my husband and filing for separation and divorce immediately. I'm currently writing this from our hotel room. I spoke to Sarah and asked why she didn't bring any of this up previously. She told me that Elizabeth only started acting like that after husband had already proposed, and both she and Aiden wanted me to be happy because they'd seen how depressed I was after my late husband died. This obviously broke my heart. I told her, and later Aiden, that they were my happiness. Sarah argued and said that since I made so many sacrifices, it's only fair that they did too. I promised her that she never needs to sacrifice anything for me, as I'm their mother. Sarah started crying, apologizing, and just saying how she never meant for me to lose another husband, and that she never would have let Aiden get hurt. I kept reassuring her the whole ride to our hotel. My kids are asleep now. I'm scared. Neither husband nor Elizabeth has contacted me. I'm not sure if I want them to. That's it for now. Thanks all for the comments. Question: should I go to the jail and speak to Bailey? It seems my husband didn't know about Elizabeth's behavior, and I didn't either. So I just want answers. Let's read relevant comments here. User 1 says, "Good grief. I'm glad you're all safe. Definitely file charges. Make sure you get copies of the medical records. The hospital should have reported it and had police taking a report while kiddo got stitches. Abuse of a minor isn't something they typically disregard. Seek a restraining order and use the resources available for victims. A friend had a similar situation and she got to move back home and was awarded a victim's advocate, a lawyer for help pressing charges and going through the process, and a divorce attorney. Yes, if you make more than legal aid will allow, you'll pay for the divorce attorney yourself, but use all the resources available and use their referrals when you have to pay out of pocket. This exists for people in your situation for a reason. My friend was advised to send copies of the police report and PFA to husband's ex. No direct contact. Just use the mail system. You should ask about this as well. Not only does this involve her and her child, but friend's ex was able to fill in a lot of blanks that are being used as history and proof that this isn't an isolated incident. Your STB ex's ex may say he sucked, but nothing like that. But she also has a child that's looking at having an incarcerated dad and needs to get her ducks in a row. If child isn't dealing with legal problems of her own, they could all get a release date together as one happy dysfunctional family. Report both to the police. Your husband isn't the only abuser, and your daughter deserves justice too. Seek protection and assistance. You can get reimbursed for the hotel, financial assistance to pay his bills while unable to live in his home, free therapy for all three of you, and more just by asking for charges. You aren't alone. OOP says, I did file a police report at the hospital. Nobody has said anything to me, though, about if police contacted my husband. I've never been in a legal matter like this, so I'm not sure what happens now. User 1 says, who does your home belong to? OOP replies, we purchased it together a few months before our wedding, so it's in both our names. Yowza, that escalated pretty quickly. You know, at first I was just thinking, okay, this is your typical blended household, making the necessary adjustments to live together. Obviously, you've got 3 teenagers in the fold here, and, just teenagers being teenagers, right? And then all of a sudden, you got fists flying, people getting slapped, slammed into mirrors like, late 1990s WCW. What in the world? I think once that line is crossed, there really is no coming back. So divorce is definitely the move. Press charges, do what you gotta do, and then just get the hell away from them. That's very unfortunate ending. Story 3. Me, 28M, with my GF, or ex now, I think, 28F, of 4 years. We set up a life in a home. She just ended it after realizing she needed to find herself. So this is fresh. Probably too fresh to post anything. But I don't really have any family or people to talk to, so here goes. GF just ended our 4-year relationship after I did some poking and prodding. We have a house, a life. I just finished saving for a ring last week. Tomorrow we have reservations for our 4-year anniversary, and I'm hyperventilating a bit. The story is a little complicated. She's had a hereditary disease her whole life. We started dating when she was in remission of sorts, and she got sick again about a year in. It's been a mess of new drugs, sickness, health, etc. for her. We've made it through together. It made our bond very strong. I own my own business, so I was able to work and support us both when she couldn't work her full-time job. However, this business found me pretty successful at a young age. I fell into a deep, deep depression. She helped me through that just by being there, but it's been rough. I gained back 90 of the 100 pounds I lost in high school, drank heavily, I became much more withdrawn, I lost my lust for life, all for a business. She's always been the type to never speak up. She never wants to upset anyone to a fault. She was walked all over in past relationships, jobs, etc. I pushed as hard as I could to figure out simple things, like what she wants to eat for dinner. Her doctors had a note not to trust what she says because she's oftentimes more sick than she says she feels. About 18 months ago, we made the decision to move, after living together for a year, out of the city. The city was killing us, and we picked out a house in our dream location. I purchased it, knowing full well it's not smart to own a house with an SO you're not married to. We made the decision she'd finally quit her job and go back to school for a career she loves. It took her our whole relationship to do so. I've been supporting us 100% the whole time. Without her asking, she's always felt terrible about it. This change kicked me out of my depression. We were in a place that I could thrive in. She could go to school and work, and we could have a family. I hired people, started working a normal schedule, stopped drinking heavily, and most importantly, my focus was life again, not business. I was living for experiences. She loved the change in me. We were more active, she drove into school, and all was good. We talked heavily about marriage, had a rough time frame. Everything was going really great. Then she got sick in October, like really sick. 6 weeks in the hospital. I hired extra people and commuted 5 hours a day to see her, only missing 3 days. She ultimately had surgery and has been recovering at home the past month, able to get out and about a bit. I noticed a change as she was in the hospital. She wasn't excited to see me. I started having panic attacks when I got home due to the hours and schedule. I had thoughts of overwhelming dread that she was actually falling out of our relationship. We talked about it and she assured me that was not the case. And through some reading, I found that these thoughts were part of the depression I thought was gone. As she's been home recovering, I've done everything I can. I noticed our sporadic conversations about the future stopped. She turned away or changed the subject when I mentioned kids. She never kissed me. I had to kiss her. No hugs, no nothing. So finally tonight I just pushed her. I could only ask, "You okay?" so much as I had the past 4 months. She broke. She said she had a lot of time to think in the hospital. She said she wasn't living for herself and she needs to find herself. And she feels horrible because for 4 years I pushed her daily to find her passions and follow them, not to think of others first in such an extreme. I did this because that's what I do. I work my dream job and I want that for her. She says she feels like she's holding me back. She loves me, and I think I believe that, because she's refusing to let me settle. But damn, do I still love her. Most upsetting, she said that she's never felt at home in our house. She's felt like it was always mine and she was a girlfriend staying over. I pressed this issue before we moved, asking her where she'd like to live. Anywhere in the world. I can work from anywhere. She said this was a great idea. Please know that I've also got no design sense. I'm just the muscle. So it's a matter of my stuff being all over the place. She's decorated very nicely. So here I sit, sober, crying, fat, with no one to call. No close family or friends in a 120-mile radius. I can't bring myself to open the door to the office I just built out for her new career, and the paint is literally drying from earlier tonight. We moved to a family area, no more college scene. I read advice to, quote, throw yourself into work, and I have a job that almost killed me once. And I will be alone in this house that was, in 2 to 3 years, meant for our family. Money is not an issue. I love the area, I love our home, and I do not wish to leave. It truly is my dream to live here, but it was my dream to live here with our family that we had planned. Life lesson, nothing is set in stone. So how do I even start to cope? We still love each other. We're best friends. I'm going up to sleep in our bed because I can't bring myself to sleep in the guest room, and she doesn't want me to. She's going to stay while we untangle our life, and she, along with my family and hers, are afraid of what I'll do to myself. I'm not going anywhere. I've never been self-unalival, but I sure as hell can't drink this one away, because the drinking won't stop. But she's going to leave, like, soon. I know it's not fair to hold on to the idea that she might just need to do some soul-searching and come back. And I know that being so sick for so long, she really didn't have a chance to figure out what she wanted. But I just can't help but feel absolutely gutted that it took this long for it to come out, because I can't see my life without us. It's the most life-shattering thing I've ever felt. And now, update 1 was posted the next day. The past 24 hours have been a beautiful and sad journey. After the initial shock wore off, we've done a lot of talking, and for the first time, we've been completely honest with each other at the same time. We've been waiting and waiting for our relationship to fit into the life we built around it. We've had a hard go at it with the sickness, depression, and ultimately the transitional time in our lives. It was a hard time for everyone around us, getting out of college and finding ourselves. We both care so much for each other that we tried to force it to work, ultimately denying our own desires in the process. Personally, I admitted to myself that I'm more afraid to be alone in this house and area than I am upset our time living together is ending. I've struggled with this since we moved here 18 months ago, because this is my dream. However, I've had serious doubts about our relationship, and the thing that kept me from saying anything was a fear of the unknown, a fear of living alone as an adult for the first time in my life. Ex-GF was very clear that it's not fair for me to feel guilty about the life I've built, and this is very true. Likewise, it's not fair to blame her for not wanting the same life. I do wish she had spoken up sooner, but ultimately I love her for trying to make it work because she wanted to make me happy. Ex-GF simply does not know what she wants. She thought she wanted a house, kids, and a family, and when they started coming, she realized that she didn't know what she wanted. She only knows that she doesn't know what she wants. We are both adamant that life is too short to settle. This is important. We've been living as best friends for a long time now. Years maybe. Saying this out loud was a relief, because it does not mean either of us want our relationship to end. It just needs to evolve into its proper state. We decided to take the week to pack our stuff up, and while it is sad, it's amazing to be with each other now that this is in the open. Sure, there's the initial feeling of hatred at everything that reminds us of the relationship, because it's a hard thing to close an overall happy time in your life when you know it's for the best. But this is not an angry breakup, and it's been important to realize that the memories of these objects are all good memories. When the sweeping feelings of fear and sadness go away, happiness will remain. I've come to realize that it's not healthy to fill a void in oneself with a relationship. My biggest fear is being alone, because I don't yet know how to do that. This relationship became a way for me to fill that void and avoid the fear. I know the process is just starting, and I know there will be some hard days ahead, but I have a feeling that I've built much more alone in our relationship the past year than I will outside of it. XGF and I aren't denying that we're very good friends, so this isn't goodbye. It's a change in living situation and a new personal journey for the both of us. And so life goes on. I've started the hunt for the right therapist, and my short-term plan is to get through moving her out. I will admit that the thought of taking her key is terrifying, and I'll miss the small things like the tampon box in the closet and the shoes all over the entry. But as time passes, I think this sadness will reside, and only happy memories will remain as we reminisce and catch up over lunch someday soon. Now update 2, which came 2 days after the OG post. I didn't know what to expect from this event because I had been dreading it for over a year. It's fair to say that the anxiety, worry, and pain it caused in that time ran my life. I didn't take inventory of this worry, though, until we separated. Today, I find myself at the familiar pit in my stomach, the one that's become a companion of sorts since we bought the house, and then remember that there's nothing to worry about. It's done, and I truly feel much better. I have a lot of anxiety about the future. I've come to terms with the fact that I've been preparing for marriage and a child in serious ways, and that plan is on hold. XGF and I have been living together since we decided to part ways a couple days ago. We didn't know what else to do. It just felt wrong and inappropriate to rip the band-aid after such an amicable decision. But I think we're both skeptical that it wasn't a good idea. It turns out it was the best thing we could have done, because it took some time for us to open up and ultimately resolve this entire thing. Last night I came home after being out most of the day letting her pack. She hadn't got much done, just kind of started a few chores and was visibly shaken. She saw me and started crying, because, I would find out later, she really thought I was making up the whole "we've been living as best friends" thing to get her through the move out. She sees how much I do love and care for her, and it upset her because she thought she would be breaking my heart. It's important to note that this illustrates her issues. Putting others ahead of yourself is mostly a good thing, but when you value the simple happiness of those around you over your long-term emotional well-being to the extent it affects your quality of life, it's unhealthy. I recognized this and was hell-bent on making sure she wasn't staying the rest of the week just for me. This was the catalyst for probably the most honest and healing talk we've ever had. We sat on the couch for hours, talking about us and what happened. Ultimately, she saw that I was completely honest with her, and that changed everything. We had both felt the same way for so long. Once that thin veil of a romantic relationship was lifted and the expectation was gone, we instantly opened up and have actually been closer than we've ever been. It's strange and unexpected, but I think it's very welcomed on both sides. We have a very special relationship. It just isn't romantic. I think the most complicated thing about this situation is how simple it is. We are two people that fell in love, and that love transformed into the love of two close friends over time. We saw it all the way to the end, as far as we could go before a refused proposal ruined our relationship. We tried. It just didn't work in that way. She told me that she had waited for months because she had no idea her feelings were mutual. Years of business have taught me not to wear my heart on my sleeve, and while I lived with these thoughts, I was very careful not to show my hand. Why? It's complicated. Our relationship was an ebb and flow of emotion. She was extremely sick at times and extremely healthy at other times. I was the same with my depression. I've always been her main caregiver during this, and those doubts became hard to justify as true or circumstantial for both of us. Our relationship was very much that of a parent and child at times. It became a waiting game. It's not easy to think straight when you're spending 40 hours in the car 6 weeks in a row with your life on hold, or working a job you hate because you don't want to upset your coworkers by leaving. As we always experience periods of health after the sickness, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. We both care for each other so much and understood sickness that we didn't want that to be a determining factor in our future healthy lives. So we both waited. In the spurts of good health, we continued to build the life we thought we wanted, never stopping to assess the one determining factor together, our relationship. We simply thought we needed to see the big picture, and in a way, I think we did. Now that the life is set up, there are no doubts in either of our minds. We talked a lot about the timing because she felt terrible it came up when she was in the hospital and around the holiday. Keep in mind, she had thought this was one-sided, so she had wanted to say something but didn't want to ruin this time of year. I think this was the first time she really knew I was being truthful when I said I felt the same way, and there has never been a good time to do this. She said she felt guilty because she wanted us to see each other's families one last time. This was a green light for my ultimate conclusion that we weren't crazy. This had simply turned into a great friendship. I asked her if we were old friends from college, what would have been different about our holiday? She and I both spend days with other friends' families this time of year, and besides maybe sharing a bed instead of taking the floor, there was no difference. We are very close friends with each other's family members, and none of those relationships have to change. I think in the end, we're going to go on to stay good friends with very little break because that's what we've been for 2 years. We both think our friendship will grow now that the awkward expectation of romance no longer exists, and we're mutually happy about it. I'm very scared to be alone, and this is my next big adventure. It's going to be one day at a time, and I'm not looking for a big break until I venture on to start the family hunt from zero. But I know that I have to be okay here by myself to have any sort of chance at a healthy relationship in the future. So that's what I'll do first. And then final update comes 4 days after the OG post. Today she moved out of our home. We always called it a home, but I don't think we ever got there. I think it was still just a house to both of us. Her whole family decided to come. We're very close, and I've always felt closer to them than almost my entire real family. A lot of my pain did not come from our separation because there truly is no heartbreak there. We love each other deeply, but it's a familial love. It has not been a romantic love for a long time. My pain came from the thought I was losing part of my family. Their friendship, their intelligence, and their love are all things I've come to feel are my own. And so they came to help her, sure, but they also came to support me. They came to hug me and cry with me, and to let both of us know that this is not crazy, but the most mature and perfect thing to do. They came to make sure I knew we'd be sailing and laughing around the dinner table very soon. Mostly, they came to move her things into the truck and then to move my extra stuff from the basement to the empty spaces. They did this out of love, and I felt that deeply all day today. This whole experience sounds like bullcrap to most, and if I were reading this, I would agree. What happens when one of us moves on and starts seeing someone else? We don't know, but we do know that we both want to see the other happy, and we've both lived in this relationship with so much guilt, watching the other compromise to try and make it fit. In the days that followed our decision to separate, we felt a lot of things. It took a lot of time for us to sort through years of buried thoughts and emotion. We did that, lifting the pressure of romance and embracing the warmth of close friendship. And I'm glad we had our week because I don't think our relationship has ever been better. Ultimately, we're doing this for the right reasons, and we're doing it for very similar reasons. I have a lot of unresolved issues, and my alone time in the past has led to drinking issues and depression because I just didn't have the skills to conquer it. I'm afraid to be alone. I can't build a healthy relationship until I learn how to do this. I've been debating our relationship for years against being alone, and while it wasn't the correct decision, it was always the easy one. I spent years of taking care of her, and it was out of love, but it was also because taking care of myself was harder. This is wrong and not fair to myself or her. She has never been alone and has sought the happiness and validation of others to bring herself happiness. She has stayed in situations not for herself, but for others involved because of this. She went to the college her parents wanted and stayed because her roommate wanted her to. She was destroyed in previous relationships because she put her needs second and was walked all over. She stayed in horrible jobs for years because she didn't want to inconvenience her superiors by having to hire a new person. She moved up here for me because she did not know what she truly wanted. She will not be successful in a relationship until she can put herself first and know that she is not compromising herself for the other person. And she was able to finally recognize that because of our relationship. There's no denying that our time together has been the best of both our lives, and there's absolutely a great sadness that it's over. This is not jargon to avoid that. As we separated and untangled our stuff, we were regaining our own individuality and independence. This week there was a lot of crying, but the tears were happy, and we've had so many good experiences, that we've both grown into better people because of the other. Reliving the past 4 years was therapeutic and beautiful. It brought us closer together as friends, and we celebrated that this experience will only get better from here. We have a long road ahead, and our first lesson is that we are not we anymore. I am me, and she is herself. We have both spent a long time living one life, and we both agree that while it probably isn't what two perfect emotional people would do, it was an amazing experience that we wouldn't change. We both became better people because of each other, and that's a successful relationship in my book. But it is no longer our house, our bedroom, and our fridge. It is mine because I live alone now. It is important for me not to cry every time I slip and say we, because I do not yet have any I memories. That will come next, and as scary as it might be, I'm excited. I will make my house a home. I will not drink to bury the fear, and I will begin therapy and move past my demons. I look forward to learning the fine art form of me. Thank you all for the support this week, Reddit. You've been very kind, and I think this will be my last update for the time being as I take on the next chapter of an already incredible life. Now let's check out OOP's comment. Hey bud, I feel for you. My best friend, who just so happens to be your height and weight oddly enough, was in a very similar relationship, except they'd been together 7 years when his ex came out. I can offer you a story of two cities, so to speak. I'd been best friends with my buddy and his girl since middle school. We and 3 other friends all moved to the same city for college and stayed best friends. Still are to this day. Because of that, some of us didn't make many new friends in college. They broke up right after college and he didn't have many other friends, so he did what you're doing now. Wake up, work, home, sleep, over and over. Fast forward to present day, and he's dated a little, but for the most part, he's just kind of doing the same old. Hasn't made many friends, keeps to himself. So when my 4-year relationship ended this past December, I was terrified. I had moved out of the city, didn't know anyone besides my ex in a 60-mile radius, and was worried I'd get stuck in the same rut. I had stopped doing a lot of the things I always loved to do, moved away from the people I had done them with, and really fallen into the whole couple's lifestyle. I had forgotten how to live as a me and only knew how to live as a we. Truth is, you lost a bit of your single identity because you've been part of a we for so long. It's going to take time to get this back. I'm 8 months out of my relationship, and I'm just now starting to feel normal day to day. Riding bikes, building things, I'm finally happy on the regular. But I did something my friend didn't do. I got a therapist. I immediately got out and met new people. It didn't matter if we ultimately didn't get along. I talked to anyone and everyone I met, asked about cool stuff to do in the area, and actually found a few friends to hang out with. Now I'm slowly becoming part of the community in my new area without my ex. I'm involved in a few activities, and I don't sit at home at work browsing Reddit every night alone. It's just not relationships or breakups. Life, all of it, is what you make of it. It's going to take you a while to even feel up to leaving the house, and that's okay. You need time to process the last 7 years, to grieve and accept everything. But I promise that if you put yourself out there, you'll find new friends and activities. You'll start to build a life for yourself, and to be honest, I much prefer my life now to being in a bad relationship. Keep strong. It'll get better. This is sad, but beautiful in the same vein. The one thing that I think is kind of tricky is the fact that he's staying in that home. I think that that could possibly trigger a little bit of PTSD as he's walking around an empty house and kind of reminiscing, seeing, little things or areas of the house where maybe his girlfriend would hang out, maybe eat dinner on the couch, laying in the bed. That, to me, again, I'm just kind of projecting thoughts here. That might be a little bit triggering in a way. So if it were me, if I were in that situation, yeah, you guys need to separate, but I think he might be better off relocating and moving someone else. I don't know if he straight up bought the house, if he's got mortgage payments, what's going on with there, or if they were renting, but if there is a way to maybe stay in the area but move to a different area of residence, that may help. But either way, it's just one of those things that you've got to go through and allow time to heal the wound. So best of luck. Story 4. Am I the a-hole for making my family cancel their vacation because I don't want to watch their dogs? My parents, 82M, 75F, asked if I would help them book a much-needed vacation. They also asked me to do the same for my brother, 43, and SIL, 33, because they wanted to take a family vacation in September. My husband, 46, and I, 41F, can't afford to go because I'm currently out of a job. Even though this would be the first family vacation I will have ever missed, and it made me really sad, I said I would of course help. My mom even mentioned to me that in a way it's good because I'd be able to watch my brother's pugs and my parents' chihuahua. Here's the thing about watching the dogs. It's a 24/7 job that requires me to stay at my brother's house. The dogs are wonderful, but very high maintenance. Because of this, I've been telling my brother for nearly 10 years that he needed to hire a dog sitter. Money isn't an issue for him. I've dog sat for them 3 times this past year, varying from 1 to 5 nights. They paid me well, but I do not feel comfortable staying at their house, and I find the round-the-clock care exhausting. My husband and I have 5 cats. And we're no stranger to feeling like our pets are our kids, but we don't have dogs for a reason. Now, I'm supposed to be booking this trip for my brother, but he hasn't even asked me about watching the dogs. Sunday at family dinner, everyone is there except my SIL, who is ill. My brother was sitting across from me, so I reach out to hold his hand and say that I love him. I love pugs, but I can't watch them when they go on vacation and that he needs to get a dog sitter. I said it was just too much to ask me to be trapped at their house for 7 nights, and that I've been asking him to hire a dog sitter for nearly a decade. I even offer suggestions and said I'll help find someone. He starts to get reactive and says that they won't watch my cats anymore. I said that's fine, we have a cat sitter, but I point out that I asked them if they can help. They, on the other hand, didn't ask me. My brother finally concedes that it's a lot to ask 7 nights and 5 dogs. Excuse me? Yes, 5 dogs, because his MIL apparently was planning to go too. So now added to the mix are 2 Italian greyhounds. I stay calm and gently point out that I felt this way before knowing there were 5 dogs. Can he imagine how I felt? He seemed to understand. By the time I left dinner, there were hugs and kisses and all was well. I knew my brother was upset, but he seemed to understand and I was really proud of putting up boundaries. The next evening, I call my parents to see if they've heard from my brother. Apparently, he called them after he got home from family dinner and was blindsided by me. My SIL was just as upset as him, too. They think I'm throwing a tantrum because I can't go on the vacation. Well, yes, that sucks. I told them my real issue is being trapped at their house for 7 nights. Now they're canceling the vacation because I won't watch the dogs. Am I the a-hole for telling them I won't do it? Now let's read some relevant comments here. One commenter says, NTA, they are grown people who had plenty of time to find arrangements for their dogs. Didn't they have somebody else to watch the dogs when you all travel together? Is this a weird ploy to punish you by making you feel guilty or something? Seems reactive. OP replies, the only time we've all traveled together was for my brother's wedding, which the dogs came to. This would be an international beach trip, which we haven't had in, I guess, over a decade. To be fair, he couldn't go on the last trip in 2015 and I went, but I only had 1 cat and no special requirements at the time, so my roommate watched her. So I feel bad for him not being able to not go on family vacation, although it feels self-induced to me at this point. I am very emotional and I can't tell if my judgment is clouded. Commenter replies, even if they thought you were throwing a tantrum, they didn't need to cancel their vacation over it. And it's not your problem if they do. They can do whatever they would have done if you had planned to attend this vacation with the family in the first place. The fact that their first action was to pin this on you instead of finding another solution that might not even exist or might cost way more than they would pay you because, honestly, 5 dogs speaks volumes about how much labor you're actually putting in and how little they value you. OOP replies, you kinda hit the nail on the head about how I feel. Like, they don't truly value my time and feelings. We have a close family and generally we do anything for each other. I've taken care of 4 of the dogs for 5 nights once, and while it was taxing, I was happy to do it because it was so they could take a trip with my SIL's family before the dad passed away from cancer. I love the dogs. They have a lovely home and it's literally a mile away from me, but they cannot be unsupervised for more than an hour at a time, so I really can't leave. They don't realize how hard that is on me, and I feel like this time it's an acceptable moment to set a boundary. Commenter says, NTA, I wonder if the amount they lost for non-refundable items is less than what a dog sitter would cost. OP says, they hadn't even booked the vacation yet. That's how much advance I gave them. I only put together a quote for them. Another commenter says, NTA, they can hire a pet sitter. It's not your household to take responsibility for. Edit, I also don't understand why they needed your help to book it. OOP replies, oops, I took that part out because I was way over the character limit. I can book like a travel agent and waive my commission, so they save a few hundred. I realize how awful that sounds in context of this post, but it's easy for me to do, and as someone that loves to do things for others, but currently doesn't have the budget for it, it's something I'm happy to do. Another commenter says, so they get a discount by not paying you for your services and expect you to watch 5 dogs 24/7 and live apart from your spouse to do so? How much do they usually pay you for the normal 3? Because I bet it's not nearly as generous as they tell you it is. OP says, so this isn't a super common situation for us, despite what my harping on this for 10 years implies. I went over my character limit, so I couldn't add this bit of context. My brother set the precedent nearly 10 years ago that the dogs can never be alone at night because of separation anxiety. So when he was single and traveling for work, my mom had to stay the night there with the dogs. And since she lived way closer than me and I had an office job, she would go back and forth to the house every 5 hours to let them out. Back then, I used to say that it wasn't fair to Mom and that he needed to hire a dog sitter. My mom loved it because the pug cuddles are amazing and they are good dogs, but I still was vocal that it was way too much to ask Mom. Last year, my husband and I bought a house a mile away from my brother, and the dog care has fallen to me because why would I make my mom continue to do that when it's easier for me? The first time I did it, I was extremely anxious, but I didn't complain because it was so my brother and SIL could take a family vacation with her dying father. I had 4 dogs then, and it was $500 for 5 days. To be completely honest, I would not have accepted the money if I hadn't just lost my job. To me, that is what family is for. There was another couple of times for 1 and then 3 nights due to a family emergency with my SIL's family, so again, no problem. I've dropped by a couple times to let the dogs out back to potty when asked. And even recently, there was a day that neither my mom or I were available to let the pugs out when a situation came up, and I specifically told my brother he needed to have a trusted pet sitter on hand and hire them before he needs them. But this is the first time that I feel like it's completely different and not right for them to ask me to do all this. It feels like taking advantage, and it feels like when my mom had to stay there when my brother traveled all over again. And I'm not willing to put myself through it for a long vacation when this is exactly the scenario I've been harping on. Commenter says, why would anyone want to watch that number of dogs? OP replies, to be honest, it's not really the number of dogs. That bothers me only on principle, but it's the fact that they require constant supervision, so I can't go anywhere. Commenter says, I don't even understand why they'd plan an expensive family vacation, knowing part of the family couldn't afford it. When money isn't there, you can't just pull it out of your butt, nor should anyone go into debt for it. OP replies, to be fair, I got married this year and bought a house, and my parents have been bending over backwards for me. And my dad was diagnosed with bladder cancer and just finished his treatment, and they haven't been on a trip like that in years. And my brother and SIL's first year of marriage was really awful because her dad was diagnosed with a glioblastoma and passed away just before last Xmas. So I understand them wanting to go and bring the MIL as well. And I support that. I just shouldn't have to be stuck at their house for a whole week. More clarification. OOP says, I was over the character limit, so I couldn't go into depth on some things. For clarity, 1, I have the ability to book like a travel agent and not take commission and give it as a discount instead. This is something I happily and willingly do and is really very easy for me. 2, they would pay me. I don't know how much, but I could guess around $700 since they paid me $500 when I stayed 5 days with 4 dogs, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at. And 3, of course the thought passed through my mind when we were discussing the booking that, damn, wouldn't it be nice if he just brought us along? But my unemployment isn't his problem, and I know that if I actually needed money, I could go to him. But yeah, the whole situation of it being a family vacation I just can't go on makes it suck that much more. Like a rotten cherry on top of a decade-old banana split. Now this is about OP's parents and their feelings. OP says, I gotta say, my mom felt horrible about it and my parents are supporting me. They really thought my brother would realize that what I asked is fair, and he and my SIL have really thrown us for a loop. Then again, since my SIL wasn't there, she's going off whatever my brother told her, and who knows how he conveyed the message. More clarification. OP says, just to be clear and fair, they haven't been using me for years. I just was very vocal about my brother needing to get a dog sitter because when he was single and traveling for work, my mom would always watch them, and I said I didn't think it was fair to her and dad. I just moved nearby a year ago, and the only times I've watched the dogs, I did willingly because of family emergencies and health crises. But I never stopped saying they needed to find a dog sitter so it wouldn't be a problem in the future. But this is the first time it has felt truly inappropriate to me and an acceptable situation for me to lay down a boundary because there is no crisis. In his head, it's win-win because I get to earn money and he gets someone he trusts to watch the dogs. But I value my time more than money in this situation, so that seems to have been an unexpected twist for him. And then one more note from OP. OP says, funny enough, I was on the phone with him when putting together a quote and I said, oh, if I get a job in time, we can come too. And my brother says, well, who will watch the dogs? And I responded, a dog sitter. He then says, Well, we were going to pay you, and I let him know that if I had a choice between going on family vacation and being paid to watch the dogs, I'm obviously choosing the vacation. I don't think it ever occurred to him. OP ultimately voted NTA, and now here is an update post. My brother apologized, and we were having a very good and calm conversation. We were getting to a point where I was willing to make a compromise because I finally felt heard. Then my SIL, who had had an attitude the whole time, snappily said, "Okay, so what do we need to do to resolve this?" Things started to get heated because I felt her tension and tried to acknowledge it. I said that I was really hurt by my SIL's actions. I left it out of my OG post, but she was complaining about helping me clean my house before my wedding. I later found out that she told my dad that I had moldy dishes in the sink, and that was humiliating. I said it hurt a lot when I learned she brought it up again as part of her argument why I should watch the dogs. She sarcastically said, "Oh, so I'm the villain." I said, "I feel like from what I've gathered from my parents this past week, that you think I'm sabotaging this vacation because I'm jealous that I can't go. And if you think that, you really must not know me, and that hurts." And she said, with the same rude tone as earlier, "I must not know you because that is 100% what I think." My eyes welled up because I felt like she had just sucker punched me. And she looked at me and said, "Here comes the temper tantrum." I stood up to leave. Then I turned around again and said over everyone yelling my name to calm down, "If you will, with all your time, money, and resources, decide to not go on vacation, that's your own decision and not because of me." I got the hell out of the house and sat in the car until my husband came out. She was in my wedding. I've been so happy to have her as my SIL. I've been nothing but loving to her. Now I see she doesn't give a F about me. I'm gutted. It's clear that she has zero respect for me and probably never even liked me. I'm devastated because my family is everything, and I feel like my relationship with my brother will forever be altered. She's not the person I thought she was, and now I'm not only not watching the dogs, but I guess I'm also accepting that I don't have a sister like I thought I did. You know, this is your typical family dysfunction. However, I will say that communication and assumptions are definitely the culprit of the problem here. A lot of assumptions being made about what will or will not be done in specific situations. I think it's always better to just be open and communicate about these things. It may seem, trite and boring, but the fact of the matter is that none of these issues would have come up if there hadn't been an assumption that she was going to watch the dogs. So that is what it is, and OP, don't get torn up that your sister-in-law doesn't like you. Just talk to her, talk it out, hash it out, and if she doesn't want to hear it, then just go straight and see. It's your sister-in-law. Come on.